Man, Isaiah's always been such a good kid. And I thank God he's nothing like I was when I was his age. He generally hangs around good people, stays out of trouble. He's very respectful. My only fear for him is that he's just caught at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this special edition of my podcast. And we were just joking before we recorded here. I'm not sure what this one's called. Maybe, crucial conversations for our culture or something. I'm not sure what we want to name it, but I'm just excited to have the conversation here with my friends, James and Shalonda Cheatham. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
So, guys, we decided to do this interview because Sunday we're all a part of a church here in Indianapolis called Mercy Road Church, and has multiple churches that are all one network here in Indianapolis, and we're part of the Carmel campus. And we came together this Sunday, and I was able to preach and then invite you guys to come up and share, some of your life perspective of growing up in America Black. And it was a Sunday that I know that I'm not going to forget ever. And in a Sunday here in the year 2020, where we have had so much happen in our country, I heard somebody say the other day, right now, it feels like we're experiencing the Spanish flu, the Great Depression, and like the 60s civil rights, movement at the exact same time. I mean, these are crazy times. And, we had this conversation in just an open dialogue. And one of the things somebody came up to me, guys, between services and said, Daron, I've gone to church my whole life, and I've been in predominantly white churches. And I can't ever remember being in a service where we had this open dialogue about race and heard from the perspective, from the eyes, the heart of an African-American couple. And I was taken aback because I had to agree. I've been in the church for 42 years in my whole life, in predominantly white churches, and we have not had this conversation. And I just can't get my mind around that. I have heard sermons against probably every sin in the Bible, and lots of sermons about sins that are really inconsequential, right?
Right.
And I've not heard one in an open dialogue about racism the way we did Sunday. And I'm just so grateful for you guys to be available and faithful in that process, and then to be a part of this conversation. But give me your perspective from, you guys have grown up in predominantly Black churches. You've gone to predominantly white churches. Was Sunday a new experience for you guys in your life growing up in church?
Go ahead. Well, you said, was Sunday a new? Yes. Experience?
Yeah, like, have you had a conversation like that in church before?
Yes. We went to, so predominantly Black church growing up. And I mean, it was probably only once or twice a year, wouldn't you say, where we would actually have a service that was actually geared toward racial unity. So that was our experience growing up in the African-American church. In 2005, we did start going to a predominantly white church. And Shalonda and I actually thought we would take that idea and try to apply that to the predominantly white church we're going to. And I remember the pastor saying that we wanted to call it a unity service, but the pastor didn't want to do that because he felt like to call it a unity service or to have some kind of service like that would be to say that there's disunity. So he did not want to, he didn't want to do that. So yes, it is something that in our African-American churches, it is something that we did cover at the time. Go ahead.
But years later, I just think that it was ahead of time for him, because years later, he did call it a unity service. As a matter of fact, he put it in lights across the pulpit. Unity,
Wow.
And yes, and he began to, so I just think that it was like, I was always giving, would you say, suggestions that were before he was ready. You know what I'm saying? But he did speak about the racial divide and racism being a sin, but there was never a conversation like how we had up there. It was just one perspective.
So it wasn't something where you were invited.
Right. There was no dialogue.
Sure. There was a dialogue. Right.
Yes. Yeah. That was the very first time I've ever seen that done.
Well, I guess the hope that I have in the story you're telling is that this leader, he progressed. He was.
Yes.
Do you know? And he's not on, so I don't want us to talk out of turn on him. But do you have any idea what led him to open his mind and to see that there was a need for unity?
I think was it following Trayvon Martin, or was that slightly right before?
I would say, I don't know. I can't really pinpoint it to a particular event.
Yeah.
But I just really thought it was just the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That the Holy Spirit would just moved upon him to really help him to see, and then we started having a lot more Black people come to the church and all of that, and just seeing that growing need and some of the issues that they were facing, probably even within the church, where he felt like he needed to speak up and he needed to stand up because he knew that there were some issues there that he didn't initially want to face. But I just really believe that the Holy Spirit began to move his heart to the way where he just progressed towards doing something like that. Mm-hmm.
See, I think I'm not saying I think that gives me hope.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right, Shalonda, it is absolutely, I always tell people this, what's God's will in any situation? And God's will in every situation undoubtedly is always reconciliation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like he's given us a ministry of reconciliation. That's what his heart was for the world. And so like, what is God always doing? He's always doing two things. He's reconciling and he's redeeming at all times. And so, we talked about on Sunday as we were just beginning to move into the understanding and talking a little bit about the Sermon on the Mount of looking, to when Jesus describes, who the kingdom of heaven is open to. And it's open to everyone. But when he's talking about you're blessed when you mourn, you're blessed when you're hunger and thirsting for justice and righteousness. Like you're blessed when you're seeking peace. And so, God's heart and the Holy Spirit is absolutely on the move through what we're seeing. And I think a conversation like we're having now, and the conversations that I know that happen in so many predominantly white churches in Indiana alone this past week, I think they were small steps. It's one conversation, but I have to believe that, like in the story of this pastor, that it's kind of, I mean, what's the astronaut quote? Like, one small step for man, one huge step for, mankind is, I feel like that we may be at a crossroads moment like that, because I know I've had so many comments from white friends that have been like, my life my life and my heart are forever changed, because that's the first time that, and you guys shared so humbly and so vulnerably that I had people saying, Shalonda, that they were able to feel your mother's heart through what you were sharing. And that brought them a commonality that they could realize, like, I never knew this through the eyes of an African-American mom, but now I'm empathetically impacted here, because I never want a mom to ever feel that, because I would never want to, you know what I mean? And it's just a beautiful thing. And I just can't thank you guys enough for being willing to be a part of it. And I think it is it's a one Sunday deal. And like you said, Shalonda, it can't be just a one Sunday deal, but I think good things are going to come from what the Spirit's doing across the nation right now. Yes,
I agree with you.
Guys, talk to me a little bit about, let's get back into your story a little bit, because there was some, we didn't have time to get into everything on Sunday, and I want to get more into the conversation. And James, I'm going to let you start. If people weren't at the service on Sunday, if you go to mercyroad.cc, you can watch the sermon, or if you go to Mercy Road Carmel on Facebook, the whole service is there. You can watch it and catch up. But James, I just want to talk a little bit about your upbringing is a little different. Your perspective is a little different than Shalonda's. And I don't want to put any words in your mouth. So just kind of, what was growing up, the neighborhood, the whole vibe of growing up for you, and as we see it through the eyes of of an African American brother?
Yeah. Early on, I was actually, up until the age of 12, I was actually raised in a Jewish community, which was predominantly white, which that was different as well. I never could put a label to it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I was just different. Yeah, of course, the color of my skin was different, but it was more than that. It was just the way that at times other kids could play. Some kids could play with kids, but I couldn't. I couldn't come over to some people's homes. I had a few neighbors in the back who were actually Jewish. The white kids I noticed could actually go and play. I couldn't. I couldn't come over. Didn't know what I had done wrong.
So like their parents wouldn't let you come over?
No, their parents, right. Their parents wouldn't let me come over. And I didn't know about racism back then. I just knew I was Black. They were white. And there was almost this self-hate that came out of that, that wishing I were white. For most of my childhood, up until the age of 12, I wished that I were white, born to white parents, which was tough. That was tough to deal with because that was something you just couldn't change.
Is that because your desire to be accepted and to have access to what everyone else had relationally in the neighborhood?
Yes. And I had white friends, don't get me wrong. My best friends were all white. So I had great friends, but I just realized I couldn't always do what they did. So then after that, we moved into a predominantly Black neighborhood, higher crime rates, things like that. And it was about that time that I really began to have some acceptance with my own race, just being around more Black people at the time. But I also began to experience, that's when I really began to experience racism on a more systemic level, where it was being pulled over by the cops, walking while Black, riding in a car while Black. We got stopped at a high school just because, and they made us all get out of the car, took the back seats out of the car, and searching for guns, searching for drugs. I don't know, maybe they received I don't know what happened or why that was. They didn't find anything, but yeah, surely enough, that's how it went down. So that really, as I grew older, that started to become my experience. So even as a child, yeah, it was like, just rejection. But then, yeah, it became systemic as I got older and running with Black friends all the time and things like that. So that was sort of my upbringing or my experience with racism growing up.
So I'm hearing you say that the at first it was more on a personal, family by family type. I couldn't go there. I wasn't accepted there. And this was personal. But the environment you were in, you didn't see the systemic side of it because it was predominantly white. Then as you get into your teenage years, you're around more Black people where you have relational acceptance, but you're realizing that there's societal rejection. Yep.
That's exactly right.
So talk about that, James, because, if you're up into 12, you're kind of hoping, are like, man, I kind of wish I was white. So I had this connection. Then it's like, okay, now I'm Black and I'm around more Black people, but like, what did that start doing to you emotionally or mentally through that process and even spiritually?
Well, the switch over, I mean, it was so gradual. It really wasn't that big of a deal. The worst part, well, I did experience the hardest part about it was actually being called white boy by my friends. Yeah. Because everything I did, even down to the way I spoke, was white. So there was not even full acceptance there. Because I was so different. Still had my Black friends, don't get me wrong. I still had that, but there was that ongoing joke, like, he's a white boy. That's a white boy, you know? So
which is interesting, James, because it's interesting that I see that it's almost like whether we're white or black, what I almost hear you saying is we hold these same stereotypes.
Yes.
So
yes.
white people would say, like, because I have, if this is kind of this is dumb, this is funny. I don't know if I've ever told some of this. Growing up in Arizona, I went through a season in like 6th grade where I really wanted to be black, and I was listening to NWA all the time, and like Ice-T and DJ Quick. A bunch of my parents would have killed me if they knew. And I was listening to Public Enemy. Anyway, that was when, like, do you remember when like Flavor Flav and Public Enemy were awesome, and everybody would wear like African medallions?
Yeah.
Well, Flavor Flav wore the clots, but in Arizona at least, everybody wore these African medallions. And man, I'm as white as they come, right? I mean, from the Midwest. I've been in Arizona for, a while, but I hung out with all my black friends and I wore my African medallion around with them, but it's just, but like, but if you're white and you kind of, use Ebonics and talk kind of hood, right? It's like, oh, you think you're black.
Yeah.
But then if you're black and you use, perfect sentences in English, then it's like, you're not black enough.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting that we have these prejudices and presuppositions about stereotypes that we use even against each other within the same race.
Yes. So it's really, I think, important for all sides to really work on acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you're not a part. You may not understand her. You may not have been raised in my culture, but that's okay, because there is a lot of that on both sides.
And, and there's subcultures too, right? There's subcultures within. So then that would be reasons why your friend might have received different points of view on the Black communication, on you're doing too much and you're not doing enough.
Yeah, to bring context to that, before we jumped on the call, I had shared with James and Shalonda that I had a white friend that emailed me and knew we were going to have this conversation and said, "Can you ask James and Shalonda, because she has multiple African American friends, and she has approached them for conversations, and some of them were like, 'This is amazing, great. I'm glad we're having this conversation, and we're going to grow together.' And I don't know all the context of the conversation, and then." The other conversation was like, I don't need you to say sorry to me. Like, I don't need your help. Like I got this. Like, you stay in your lane. And so then she was like, I don't know. And so, she was like, I'm trying to connect, but I don't, and so it's tough to know. And I think, love covers a multitude of sins, right?
Yes.
And if we're trying to grow in a relationship, then I guess we can learn to extend grace and patience to each other to say, like, not everybody's experiences is the same, whether you're white or black, and at the place that you're at. I think that the tough part, the good part is I think white America has woken up and they want to make things right. The illustration that just popped into my head is, I don't know how many times with my wife, I realize there's an issue in our marriage and I just want to fix it like right now. And then my wife's like, I'm not a project.
You're right.
Right? Like, I'm not a project, and I don't want you to be trying to fix our marriage. Like, I want you to listen to me. I want us to grow our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a much longer process than people feeling like I want to figure out some way that there's no quick fix for this, right?
Right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yes. It's a heart condition that needs to be transformed. It's not something that you can just throw money at, so to speak. Like if I just give them gifts, or if I just do, Yeah,
like we're not charity.
Yes.
Yes.
James, do you feel like, I spoke to someone last week that said, and she's a African American woman, and she talked about the way she stays positive, the way that she tries to stay hopeful. And she said, Daron, she said, the reality is, she said her perspective was, this is so much more difficult for African American men, because the target and the stereotype, the aggression against them is much greater than it is for women. And I think, I can't remember, I don't want to put words in her mouth. I feel like she said something about kind of like that she experiences kind of this Oprah effect or something like that at her job, that, she's a driven leader type, great leadership woman. And she feels like it's like people treat her like, oh, she's like Oprah.
Mm.
But she said, but this experience is completely different for a Black man. What's your take on that perspective?
Yeah, I'm not sure about in the career field, but I do know just being out in society. That's the toughest part. It's tough when, like I was talking about on Sunday, when that car alarm just kept going off. And your first instinct is to go out and find out what's going on. But then you stop midway and remember, yeah, that would look a little suspect or a little shady if I were to step to that car and start looking inside and trying to find out what's going on and just how that guy came. When I'm on an elevator, getting on an elevator, usually if there's a white female or that's in that elevator, I can see her clearly clutch her purse, get in the corner to, not knowing who I am or what I am, but it's almost like she automatically feels like her life is in danger or that she could be in danger if something happened. And so all over the place, you see that. You see people's reactions to you when you're coming. Oftentimes what I find is that oftentimes I'll wear my Christian paraphernalia, like my Christian hat, my Christian shirts. That actually takes the edge off of that. When people realize, okay, that's a Christian man. So I just know as a Black man in society, you are automatically looked at as sort of a predator. That's just been my experience. And every time I go to the store, I people's reactions, people's looks kind of let you know that don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people that will smile and everything, but you can always find that one or two that will just like, nah, So that's my experience. Just out in society. In the workplace, I don't have problems with that in the workplace. That's just my experience. I can't speak for every man out there, but definitely in society, I see that.
James, what about as a father, raising a young, strong Black man, in your son Isaiah? What are some of your hopes and fears for him?
Man, Isaiah's always been such a good kid, and I thank God he's nothing like I was when I was his age. He generally hangs around good people, stays out of trouble. He's very respectful. My only fear for him is that he's just caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. He just happens like Shalonda was talking about on Sunday, when he's, the moment he starts driving and he gets pulled over by a cop or something like that, something where it's, maybe it's a seatbelt violation, but then it turns into something far worse. That is also my fear as a Black man. He's going to face racism. That as being Black, there's no getting around that. Something is going to happen, and someone's going to make it very well known to him, whether he's in the store or something like that. I mean, I've had people say things to me in the gas station, and actually Isaiah was with me when that took place. So I'm not too afraid about that. But what I am afraid about is if that day comes that he does get pulled over for driving while Black, and something pops off that, no one has any control over. But yeah, he's going to face stuff. It is what it is right there.
What's his perspective been on or all your kids as they've seen, the events of the past couple of weeks unfolding? Shalonda, maybe speak from a mom's heart.
Okay, well, Isaiah doesn't see things the way that we do.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, and he even asked, he's like, "Am I naive?" And I said, "Well, you've got some more life experience to do." Because he just doesn't come from our perspective because he was shielded from it a lot. He's had a lot of really good positive experiences. He was very well accepted with his show choir family. They loved on him. I mean, there's pictures of Isaiah in their house where he's just was really well accepted. So his point of view has been shielded from that a lot. I think because of the culture, the show choir culture that he was in. A lot of his stuff will probably come when he grows up. So he doesn't really see things as a color thing. He just sees it as a heart issue as well. But he doesn't really necessarily pinpoint it down to color, And so when he's explaining these things to me and all of this, and then he questions himself, well, am I being naive? And I was like, well, naive basically means you just don't know. So yes, you are, because I was like him, I was like him. I didn't really think that racism existed. And I found out when I went to an Afro-American culture class my freshman year down at IU, and they asked, that was one of the first questions they asked, do you think racism still exists? And I raised my hand right away. I was like, no, it doesn't. And I was like the laughing stock of the class, but it was being on campus and having encounters with different teachers that's when I began to experience the institutional racism. And then as I grew older, I was able to think back on the moments where, they were being prejudiced. But at the time, it just flew over my head because these weren't family discussions in our home even.
Right.
So what led you? What do you feel like led you to think that it didn't exist? Just you hadn't experienced it in a hateful way, or was it the upbringing or the friends of your family, or?
Yes, I hadn't experienced it in a basically I always grew up with being basically the only Black girl in class, or where there might be two more, Black people in class. So it's like my whole culture has always been submerged, I guess, or assimilated into white culture. So I didn't really see any mistreatment. Now growing up, my third grade teacher, Miss LaCroix, I still remember you. She definitely was, and she was very hateful, very mean. She choked me on the sidewalk. Yes. I mean, it just crazy behavior. And it's just recounting those type things. But for me as a child, I'm just thinking, Ms. LaCroix is really mean and she really doesn't like me, But I never equated it to it being a color thing,
What's interesting about both your guys' stories is you grew up in a predominantly a very white influenced environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, have had mixed experiences through your perspective, but it's just intriguing too, because it's like, I don't know, I'd have to, dig into that, more. There's no doubt is when you get into a predominantly Black situation, when you talk about and you begin to unpack the elements of systematic racism, what that looks like to, from lower income or finance schools, you look at the different laws that have created much of the situation in lower income or inner city, type areas. There are long term effects of that. But it's interesting because I don't know, it's like you are accepted in some ways and like even, somebody like Isaiah in a predominantly white culture, but is it because you didn't fit all the stereotypes, or it's just all those things? We're trying to figure out, like, as we progress forward, we need our, we need to see neighborhoods not be predominantly white and there's the Black neighborhoods. We need to be, have an integration of that. We need to pass laws and find ways to make sure it's a level playing field, so that, neighborhoods that may have been predominantly lower income are able reduced opportunities and resources that can be reversed. But it's just, I don't know. It's in everybody's, story in life is different, but that's intriguing to me that you guys were. It sounds like it's almost like God has almost uniquely positioned you going forward to be able to build bridges between both cultures in ways to help build a level of understanding.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was actually thinking about that between Sunday and now, was how we were uniquely positioned to do just that. God has used us before as a bridge. Like I said, when we started going to that predominantly white church and actually working to bridge that gap that we knew existed. I think with many African Americans, I've actually been asked before, why would you go to a white church? Why would you, allow a white man to be your pastor? And I think with many in the Black community, there is this distrust of white people. It's not that they hate them, but it's that they don't trust them. And so even when you have now so many white people that are wanting to step in and help out and do something, there's still that distrust that exists. And I think with Shalonda and I having many experiences with, white people and of course, Black people, there is, I believe, this unique position that we have to really help bridge that gap, having some understanding at least of where both sides are coming from. No, we don't have the hardest experiences of African Americans. We don't.
Right.
But we do have some of that. And then also having experiences with knowing great white people who genuinely care, may not always know how-tos, but certainly we know that they can be trusted. Yeah. And if we could only find that way to let go of our biases, we could actually begin to embrace one another. So
I think I said it to you, Shalonda, and I don't remember who I stole the quote from. It's not original with me, but they said that they feel like the predominant issue is that Black people need to learn to trust white people, and white people need to stop being afraid of Black people.
Yeah.
And it's just, and that's, and it's interesting. I think if we could begin, to have broad conversations where white people could be like, yeah, I'm kind of scared of Black people, and here's why. You know what I mean? And Black people could say, yeah, well, I don't trust you, and let me give you the reasons why. Yeah. And that we, can begin to understand that, because, not every Black person is violent and is going to, beat you up or something. And I think there is a thought in the white community of like, I know Black people are mad. They hate us because we did wrong, but I didn't do wrong. It was like, I don't know where to start, but I'm afraid that if I go downtown, they're going to punch me in the face and knock me out because I'm white. And I'm sure and I'm sure in the Black community, it's like, dude, I'm going to go up there freaking, one of my friends that, is an African-American woman that lives up here in Fisher. She's like, her family and some of her friends are like, I'm going to go up there and drive in Fishers. Like that somehow, that you can't trust what those crazy white people are going to do, or even, to your kids or whatever. And she's kind of trying to find a space in the middle and be going like, no, you're believing a stereotype that's not entirely true. And,
yes.
Is there some truth to it? Yes, but you can't write off a whole race for that. And and you're missing out on all the positive, and vice versa for white people. It's like, you can't write off a whole race because of that and operate your whole life in fear, because you're going to miss out on all the greatness of Black culture.
Right.
Yeah, that was actually the conversation. Go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Well, I was going to say, even as when we first moved to Westfield, I believe it was 2003.
2003. Uh-huh.
Yes. When we first moved there, our families were frightened for us that we would move in Westfield / Noblesville. So we were like one of the pioneering families for us to actually submerge ourselves into white suburbia. Are you crazy? But then once we did, our uncles and aunts, they followed. They soon, like, I have an aunt that lives in Fishers now. I have an uncle that lives in Fishers. They soon like followed after it's like, oh, well, nothing bad happened to them. I think it opened up their minds that they can actually move out. And I think it's because it was so, I guess, like what they call it, red line, for so long, you can only be in this neighborhood where you can be socially accepted and no further. And then for us, it's like, well, we're going to go right in the heart of it just because I like the house. That's why I'm going. It is just like, it was kind of a risky
But they
thing
even
to
try to
do.
keep us out of there.
Oh, how's that?
You remember, was that Cindy? No, Cindy?
Oh, yeah, our realtor. So we dropped our realtor because she didn't want us up here. She didn't want us in Carmel. Why don't we look at, she kept sending us to the west side of Indianapolis. and I just like, oh my gosh, like the houses she was showing, I was having nightmares about it. Like the ceiling would be kind of slanted like this. And I kept having dreams it was caving down on me. I'm like, we're just gonna have to drop her. So we just ended up dropping her and we went and just ended up building our own house by ourselves. Because we just drove out there, liked the property, put money down on it right away, and was just like, this is where we're gonna be. But we had to drop our realtor because she did not want us out here. Is that something? But the way she did it was like, oh, well, let me show you some more houses. Well, let me show you some more houses. And like the more she showed us, the more, I'm going to say, the more ghetto they got, And I'm like, I don't want to live here. Like, no, I don't want to live. And it wasn't because it was ghetto. It was because I didn't like the house. I didn't like the house. Right. I didn't like the fact that people weren't keeping up with their yards. I wanted to be somewhere where it was pretty,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, everything you just said, that was like really spot on about how we've got to step outside of our comfort zones to really get to know one another. Just cross those boundaries, cross those racial lines. Back when I first started driving semis, I had a trainer.
Yes, Lord. That was hilarious.
You remember this? Well, go ahead. Tell the story. Tell that one first.
So, so I dropped James out because James Cheatham. That sounds like a white man's name, anyway. So I dropped him off and the trainer calls me. It was like, I can't find James. And I was just like, you can't find him. And I was just like, well, why can't you? I said, why can't you find him? I said, I dropped him there where you said you were going to pick him up. And he was just like, he's nowhere to be found. I cannot find this man. And then finally I was like, did you know that James is black? And he was like, he's black. And it's so, because he was like, so like, I don't know if it's okay to use the term redneck.
No, that's not you said.
He was so, how would you describe him?
I don't know. He was racist.
He was very racist.
So what happened then, we took off that night. And I mean, we were 2 hours into the drive and immediately he starts talking about, Indian people and how they stink and how his son beat up an Indian kid because he was Indian and, Chinese people this and all of that. So, I'm just right. I'm not saying anything. I'm just, okay. It's a very annoying, but I'm not really responding to it. A couple of days later, he starts talking about how his neighbor shot a black kid for running through his yard and then laughed about it. Thought it was the funniest thing he had ever heard. So, and that's when I kind of questioned him, like, dude, why do you think that's funny? That's, somebody lost their life. I didn't really bring up the color issue. Really trying to ignore that because at the time I'm thinking, well, if I'm just good enough, and I kind of hate that mindset. But that's what I was thinking at the time is, okay, maybe if I'm good enough, they'll see what, that black people can be good. We're not monsters. We're not tyrants. We're not thugs, but that didn't change them at all. Yeah. And finally, we were in Pennsylvania, and I mean, this guy goes on about an hour-long rant about how blacks, everywhere they move, it turns into a ghetto, and their homes become roach infested, and they drive up crime. And I mean, he just went on and on about prostitutes and drug dealers and just blacks this and blacks that. And finally, I had been holding in for like 2 weeks, and I just exploded on him. And after I calmed down quite a bit, I gave him that lecture, like, man, you've really got to come up out of your that place where you've been hiding for so long. You listen to the news, you see on the news, every time you turn on the news, you see that a black guy has robbed something or has killed somebody or something. You always see those black faces. And I said, that's where you get your perception from. You get it from the media. And by the way, a lot of black folks don't trust the media either. Right? And so, I just had that conversation. Man, next time we go out somewhere, I dare you to actually find some black guys, go sit down with them and go talk to them. If you ever go to the next bar you go to, go to a black dance club or something like that. Go hang out and get to know somebody that is outside your circle. And I guarantee you will have the time of your life. It will change your mind. It will change your heart. And I tell you what, we about a week after that, we went into Texas and we got our food. I went and got mine first, and I sat down. There were 2 black guys somewhere else, and they were just sitting and talking, and he grabbed his tray, and he went and sat with them. And he just started talking to them, and I could see him laughing and just having a really good time with those guys, and they were laughing. And, I mean, it did my heart some good. Do I believe he was completely transformed? No, but I believe a seed was planted, and I think that's all it takes. One step at a time. Let's just get out of our comfort zones and get to know somebody else that's outside of our own race. Yeah.
What I love is that the two of these stories you've shared is with the pastor at your old church, and then with this old truck driver. I mean, it's like, if God can work on pastors and he can work on truck drivers, and he can probably work on just about anybody, right? I mean,
Yes.
Wow. Do you feel like I had a conversation? Actually, it was shortly after the Ahmaud Arbery murder, and I was talking to a couple of friends, and they wanted to see change. They want to believe things can be different, but they were kind of like, how does it even change? And it was interesting what one of my friends said. He said, and this wasn't, a more morbid kind of thing, but basically, like, the older generation needs to die. Like, part of that is when there's no one left on earth, and I'm not wishing anyone's demise. Please don't hear me say that.
Yeah.
But when there's nobody left on earth that knew anybody that owned another person, or when there's people aren't on earth that ever lived when we thought it was okay for people not to be able to share a water fountain or to go to school together. Like, you think about, my kids' generation, your kids' generation, like, the likelihood that one of your daughters marries a white man, the likelihood that one of my sons marries a black woman. Like, I remember as a kid, when people first started interracial dating, people were like, whoa, like, that was not cool at all. Yeah. And you think about what, this next generation coming up, they're not going to think twice about it.
Right.
And so you think about where we'll be in another 25 or 50 years, where it's like, are you black or are you white? Well, it's like, I'm like, how much this multicultural people exist that didn't even walk on the earth, basically, like, 100 years ago. Yeah. And, my grandma, she's 90 years old. Like, she's been on this earth for 90 years. You think about the progression of civil rights and that she has lived through just in her life. Like, I have to have hope that if God his kingdom is always advancing.
Yes.
And I think this leadership for reconciliation needs to come from the church, and that we need to stop saying the black church or the white church. We need to see kingdom churches.
Man, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and the leadership needs to come from us. So when it's, you know, you go 90 years down the road and it's like, and I'm not saying, you know, never forget so we don't repeat history, but at the same time, there's going to be a whole nother generation that they won't even be able to, they won't even want to have conceived of a world that was lived in just black and white, you know? And I think that maybe we're starting to pave the way for some of that to happen, and it's going to happen slower than we want it to. And, you know, I think there's room for us to have to own our own issues and our own cultures. You know, I know the black community wants to own the things they need to grow and develop in. The white community needs to own the things they need to grow and develop in. And then together, we need to come together and say, listen, like, let's start having conversations so black people can trust white people and white people can stop being scared of black people. And there's going to be people, outliers, you know, on liners, you know, on the extremes that will never want to come together. But but I know that there's a massive majority of black and white folk that are like, I am exhausted by the absolute polarization, the hate, the division. Like, I really, really do want to learn to love, you know, my neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like James was talking about, those shared experiences is really what can help to make that happen. Just coming into each other's environments, you know. I was listening to someone earlier today. I'm not going to say the name, but he's just like, if I'm going to try to become friends and understand the way the Black experience is, I'm not going to bring them home to my gigantic big basement and submerge them into my culture for them to understand, because they won't really feel like they can communicate with me. But if I go to their home and where they are and just take that time, to sacrifice that time to get to know them where they are at, then it's like a friendship and a trust can be built so that we can have relations. And then, you know, then we can, you know, because then that way it doesn't seem like I'm trying to, like, no one wants to feel like they're having a handout. You know what I'm saying? No one wants to feel like they're charity or that you're doing them a favor. Or like how you were saying, no one wants to be fixed.
Right.
But to be understood and listened to and know that they're valued and that they're human and to be treated as such and not to be feared. You know, that's like the greatest hurt, is that when you know someone is afraid of you, and especially if you're wanting to bring help and aid, and they're afraid to walk on a sidewalk with you. That's like, that hurts, because like, it's like, you don't understand. It's like, I don't understand that, you know? And it's like, but if you're not even trying to come to understand me, you know, and like excluding people out of the conversation because you feel like they don't have anything to offer or value. But then when you realize, oh, they do have something to offer, but I'll take that, but I don't want to take you. A little hurtful.
Absolutely, Shalonda. Absolutely. Wow, guys, I could sit here and talk forever, but I no one probably is going to give us 2 hours to sit and listen to a conversation. So we should probably land the plane. But we can do another one of these. You know, I want to end the conversation with this, and it's a question, Shalonda, that I asked you on Sunday, and I want you both to speak to it, and then we'll wrap it up. But what do you guys do to guard your hearts from becoming hardened, from becoming hateful, from becoming, you know, to feel hopeless as you look at the situation? What do you guys do to guard your hearts, to keep them soft, to keep them, you know, pliable by the Holy Spirit?
For me, I don't allow media to have access to my brain as often as, you know, I try to block that. I only limit my amount of exposure to that, because I know that they are using it as tools to bring whatever, like they like drama, you know. So I don't allow drama to infiltrate me like that. You know, I avoid conversations like that. And then constantly reading the Word of God, which is truth and it's a foundation. And then, like how I was saying, like my heart being filled with worship. Whenever I feel some type of anxiety or just this unsettling, I turn it back to praise to God, and I just bless him. And then just having that renewed energy, and that might help too, with the fact that I should mention that I am a introvert. So that's how I naturally gain like my energy anyway. But that's how I gain my energy. And so I just kindle that and channel that back to God. And then that way I can go in love with eyes wide open from his perspective, with his lenses on my face. Like I'm loving with a sincere heart, so that I don't allow any of those impurities to come in. Yeah. It's like you've got to guard your heart. And if you keep allowing that junk to come in, that could be part of your DNA makeup. But I don't want that. Mm-hmm. I just want like my identity to be in Christ. And then for like the whole fruits of the Spirit, I want that to be what people see and what they know. I almost say I'm far from it, but he's helping me. I'm a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. But but I want that to be my mark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, for me, I do consume media, but I don't become consumed with it. Mm-hmm. So I listen to it because I want to be in the know. I know that there are parts of the media that sort of over dramatize, over sensationalize things. That's just what they do. At the same time, you keep on that Christ, that, you still keep a perspective, that Christ perspective, which is all are God's creation. Mm-hmm. You keep that in mind, and that will guard your heart. Mm-hmm. That alone, if you remember that all people are created in God's image, there's going to be some really horrible people, no matter what race they are, no matter what culture they come from, but that all men are redeemable. Mm-hmm. And there's always help out there. So that's what I do. Yeah, I get my information. I do my research. I actually do have those conversations quite a bit at work, and things like that. I do talk to people because I do want to get their perspective. I want to understand where my white friends are coming from. I have close friends that are absolute. They don't. Besides myself, they really don't know much of anything about Black culture. And so I do want to have those meaningful conversations, and I do have those. So in order to have one that is effective, I do have to know what's going on in the current events, and I do have to know the background stories to a lot of things. So I do have to consume the media, and I have to consume books, and I have to read up on that stuff. But at the same time, remember that these people, God loves them, and he is quite able to redeem them and to change hearts. So that's how I do it.
Guys, I love it. And I just want to affirm you that I know that God has placed you in a unique place, and that you will be, you will be someone who partners with God to build bridges that can ferry, multitudes across to a place of healing, a place of redemption, of reconciliation, racially. There's no doubt in my mind. Not everybody is equipped or called to be, more of a pioneer in this effort. There will be, early adopters, late, mid adopters, late adopters. There, and I think that's why it's so important to know who God's created us to be, to know our spiritual DNA. I know, you guys have both been through the course, and Shalonda, we spent time coaching through the course, and to know who God's created you to be, to know how to stay in your lane, if you will, of your calling, of your vocation, but to know the role that God has equipped you to play, and you guys are pioneers on this front. And I know that God has uniquely positioned you in the environments that you're in, that you're going to be able to help bridge that gap. And I'm excited to walk alongside with you and see unity and love become something that beautifully, colors the landscape of our lives. And so It's a joy to be your guys' friend and to have these conversations. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks
We
for having
appreciate
us.
you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, James, would you pray us out?
Yes, sure. Lord, we thank you today for these meaningful conversations about race that we're having today. Such a time that we're living in right now. But God, I just believe in the midst of it all, you are sovereign, Lord. And you are just really revealing your hand and your heart to so many people, especially in America today. And I pray, God, that your Holy Spirit would just continue to soften hearts, both blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, whatever they are, God. This is the human race we're talking about. And I just pray that you would just begin to soften every heart and to open every eye to see one another as you see us, oh Lord, to give us a new perspective on the sanctity of life, oh God, and what exactly that means to you. That the fact that you love us so much, you love us all so much, that you would die on the cross, Lord, that you would shed your own precious blood to save us all. And so, Lord, I just pray, God, that you would just begin to work on us in every home, in our neighborhoods, God, in our schools, in our government, God, from the top to the bottom. Lord, just do what you do. We understand that righteousness cannot be legislated. We can come up with all the laws, but Lord, you are the one that changes the heart.
Amen.
And so we thank you, God, for the work that you're doing. In the mighty name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.